Is this for real? Is this really happening?
I got this. I think what we need to consider here is what came first. We have a chicken, then there was an egg. But then before that, there was another chicken.
Kill the chicken, I'll eat it for dinner. Next!
Hello, Matias. My name is Ray Chase, and I am a animation sequence lead. Almost forgot what I was there. I'm an animation sequence lead at Real Effects Studios in Dallas, and I've been a mentor at Animation Mentor for about 10 years. Congratulations on winning the 11-Second Club contest for the month. Let's just run through your animation here, and then we can talk about a couple things.
Is this for real? Is this really happening?
I got this. I think what we need to consider here is what came first. We have a chicken, then there was an egg. But then before that, there was another chicken.
Kill the chicken, I'll eat it for dinner. Next!
Awesome. So I think you did a really great job with this. I like all the acting choices and how the characters play off one another, which I think is working really nice. And that's kind of an important thing, right? When you have two characters in a shot, to have them feel like they're engaged, and it's not just one character waiting to talk, that one character's, listening to the other character and formulating what they're about to say in their head, and then they say it, which I think is happening here, which is great. So if we talk briefly about the lady over here to the side, let's draw in something other than orange, although it is fall, right? No pumpkin colors. We're going to draw in ghost colors. Okay, so talking about the lady off to the side, I'm really liking most of what she's doing here. The only thing I was going to suggest, a couple things I was going to suggest, was that it sort of feels like the pose that she starts in, she kind of ends up in a pose sort of similar to that by the end. So what I was going to say here is that, I like that, she's leaning forward and she's kind of talking, and then she's looking at the guy, and she folds her arms, and she's just kind of like, whatever. And, the eye rolls and all of this. What you might consider doing is that rather than bringing her back forward at the end, when she says,
chicken, I'll eat it for dinner.
what did she say, hang the chicken?
There was another chicken.
Kill the chicken, I'll
Kill
eat
the
it
chicken.
for dinner.
Right, so she's like, kill the chicken, I'll eat it for dinner. Next, maybe she stays back in the chair and just is a little bit more dismissive with the gesture, and you're just kind of working again with her being more back in the chair rather than bringing her forward like you do. Just so that you're not kind of ending up at the end of the shot where you kind of started with her pose-wise. The other thing that I was going to suggest is, there's one move that you do with the eyes right here. Okay, so there's I'm feeling a little bit of a disconnect just because the brows are kind of up. There's a little bit of some space between the brows and the top of the eyeball. Right in here you get this nice gap. But then she does a redirect with her eyes, and you don't do a full blink, and it sort of feels like the eyes go wider, but the brows come down, which it just kind of feels like the brows and the eyes aren't quite working together, with the lids coming down and the eyes going up. So what I was going to suggest is just going ahead and doing a full-on blink here in the middle. And then you can get a little bit of a compression, in the eyes, so that she does close her eyes, the brows come down, she has a little bit of a squash, and then when she comes out of that, you end up in the exact pose that you have. And then it'll feel a little bit more like the eye mask is sort of working together rather than having opposing movements happening just between the lids and the brow. But yeah, that's really the biggest things that stood out to me on her. I think everything that she got going on with her in the chair, the little shoulder shrugs and little eye rolls and stuff, are all working quite nicely. All right, so moving over to the guy, just a couple things with his lip sync here at the beginning. Let me see here.
Really happening?
I got this. I think what we need to consider here is what came.
On consider here, because I know a lot of that sound is being made at the back of the throat.
I think what we need to consider here is what came.
But it's feeling a little bit like the jaw opens, like right here, and then the jaw doesn't really move anymore in X. And so I think maybe just adding another little sub move in there. So what we need to consider here. So if you go a little open. Consider, and then when he says here, here, that's where you get a little bit of an extra move. So you might even like lessen the amount of jaw that you have when he says consider here, so then you have a little bit of a change. So then it won't feel quite so much like the jaw kind of locks right there. Another thing I noticed was, let me see, let me play it.
First, we have a chicken, then there was an egg. But then before that...
Okay, before that, and he's got a little bit of an accent, right? Before that, I think we need to see some tongue movement in his mouth in this section. Because if you're saying, before that, there'd be a little bit.
But then before that,
there'll be a little bit of a tongue flick. Even if you're not doing a full TH sound, the tongue would come up, maybe hit the teeth, and then come down. And I think if you had just a little bit of a flick in there, just right in this area, that would help a lot to at least, suggest that sound's being made utilizing the tongue. One other thing that you might consider just adding in, I've used the analogy before, like with dealing with the jaw of if you think of like a cow chewing grass, right? And they got this, circular sort of motion that's being made with the jaw. It's not just moving up and down in X. I feel like you could probably use a little bit of that, a little bit of swinging this way and that way, not throughout the shot, so please don't go through and start like swinging it around. But just in a couple spots, maybe just adding a little bit of that.
Is this for real? Is this really happening?
I got this. I think what we need to consider here is...
Because even on consider here, you might even be able to have the jaw a little bit, more over, a little bit more over this way. Just a tiny bit more over that way. And then when he says consider here, you might be able to roll it a little bit over to the side. And it's one of those things that usually when I do it, I kind of find, some nice moments to add it in, not just going through the shot and throwing it, wherever. Just kind of finding a couple of moments where it might work. Usually if the mouth is making a big shape, like an ah shape, you can roll the jaw. Like if I'm like, oh my God, or something like that, or I'm surprised, you can get a little bit of a nice roll in there, and it feels sort of natural. If you're trying to do it on everything that you say, then you start to look like a Jim Carrey skit. But so yeah, just maybe just overall, take a look and see if there's a couple spots where you might be able to, juice it up a little bit by adding a little bit of some jaw racking. In terms of his expressions, with his eyes and his brows,
what we need to consider here.
When he says consider here, I almost feel like you could just stay in that. I feel like you're sort of rushing through this first expression, and I really like how he looks right here, but then he's barely in it for like even 2 frames, and then he like comes out of it. So you can actually hold him in this expression as you have, nice big, wide-eyed expression. And then when he goes into this bit, you can still keep the blink and everything, but have him going into that blink from the wider expression. So he's like, what we need to consider here is what came first, So then, you have a nice amount of time to kind of read the expression without feeling like you're bouncing through it too fast. Here towards the end, I almost feel like you could get a little bit more asymmetry in some of your brow shapes.
Have a chicken, then there was an egg.
So when he's saying, we have a chicken, and we have an egg. You might be able to get something a little bit more asymmetrical in the brow. So if you have, when he says we have a chicken, maybe this guy is a little bit more up like you have, and then maybe this guy is a little bit more down like this, and maybe you make this eye here, just a tad bit wider, and maybe this eye here is just a tad bit more smushed, so you get a little bit of, this kind of a thing happening in the eyes. And then when you get into that second expression, when he says an egg, you could do something similar there. Maybe even on the first one, when he says chicken, you don't go too wide, and then you go a little bit wider when he says egg. And that'll give you some place to go. Because right now, it kind of feels like you're, if your range with your eyes is on a scale of 1 to 10, it almost feels like you're hitting a 10 here, maybe a 9. Yeah, maybe you're hitting like a 9 here, and then you're hitting a 10 here. And maybe you need to be hitting more of like a 7, and then a 10. So there's a little bit of some place to go with the expression. And getting some of that asymmetry in the brows, I think will help, because then it won't feel like you're just kind of hitting the same shapes with the brows. All right, and I think the last thing to really talk about would be some of the hand poses. It feels like he right through here he's kind of doing sort of a similar sort of move, and you have it in two spots in the animation. You have it here, and you also have it more towards the end where he kind of does like a thing like that. Now, if you're thinking that this is kind of like a character sort of flourish, that he's being a little flourishy with his hands when he gestures and does these kinds of things, that's cool. If it's like a character trait that you want him to have, I would just try to break it up so it doesn't feel like he's doing sort of the exact same sort of thing at the same time. If you want to have him do like a flourishy roll, maybe the one hand does it more and the other hand does it less, so it feels like one hand is perhaps rolling into that pose quicker and bigger, and the other one's doing a little bit smaller, so they don't feel too much like they're twinning. And then when you get into this hand pose here, it kind of feels a bit like the fingers have a lot of tension in them, where it feels like his hand is kind of like that.
Is this really happening?
I got this. I think what we need to consider here.
Right, and it kind of feels like a hand pose that you'd be like, if you're like, stop talking, and you're like, oh. But since you're saying, what we need to consider here, you might go for something a little bit more loose in the fingers. Again, don't necessarily have them doing the same thing. It could be a similar pose, but what we need to consider here, and you have like this sort of not Jack Sparrow hands, but something similar-ish to that, so that the hands aren't quite so taut. So maybe just loosening the hands on that first pose so there's not so much tension in them. And then here towards the end, because the other hand poses through here I think are working really nice. And even when you end up, in a chicken and an egg, the hands still feel very different. They're hitting at different times, which is awesome. They would have to be, right, since he's saying this and he's saying that. But I think the positions themselves, like if you just freeze frame this, it's like, yeah, they're doing similar things, they're in similar positions, but they feel like different hand poses. So here's the other area where he does, this sort of a flourish with the hands. And here again too, I think, if you want him to kind of do something like that, maybe again, you have one hand roll a little bit more, maybe not even have them both roll down like that. Maybe one rolls a little bit more down like this, and this one stays up a little bit more as it rolls, and then varying up. Maybe this is like more of a two-finger point. This is more of a one-finger point, just to break it up, right? Again, if you're going for a character trait there. The other option that you could do is you could basically go from this hand pose here almost right into this hand pose, maybe getting into this one here just a little bit earlier, and just to do the point, with the screen right hand. The thing with that, though, is you want to be careful that you're not repeating what you're doing here, because then it's like, oh, you fixed one problem by creating another problem. So it's kind of like up to you. You can maybe mess around, maybe do some sketches just to kind of see what might feel right. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, I feel like these are all sort of suggestions to help plus the shot. I think what you have here is working really well. Some of the stuff with the expressions, I think, would actually, improve his facial animation a bit, just getting some more of that asymmetry in there. But it's what you got here is working really nice, and yeah. So if you wanted to implement any of those things, I think it might plus it out here and there. But overall, I think you did a really nice job with this, and yeah, it's super fun. And again, just to re-stress, I do like how the characters are interacting with each other, and it's not one character sitting there staring until their line comes up, and then they talk while the other character sits there and they wait, and then they talk. It's nice when the characters are looking at each other. It also helps to lead the eye too, so that she is like looking at him when he's speaking most of the time, and then she's glaring away. And then he's looking at her when she says her line here towards the end, which is awesome as well, to kind of direct the focus back and forth. So again, great job on this. Congratulations again on the win, and good luck to you in all of your future animating.